Welcome to Retail Media Lounge at Osmos. I have a wonderful personality here, Sameer Dhingra. He's been a good friend to me for a long, long time, a good guide, mentor. He's been helping us grow at Osmos really well. But apart from being a friend and mentor, Sameer plays a very important role at Google. He's a director here out of Singapore, manages the Asia Pacific role for retail and consumer innovations at Google. So think of things of one of the largest industry, Samir, retail and consumer, no better place to be, I think, in today's world. And being at Google, I'm sure, with a lot of inventions across, with the AI bit that with Gemini, etc., that's coming across, Google has, of course, a very important role in shaping up on how retail industry actually grows and looks like, say, over the next few years. So fantastic position to have. I'm sure your perspectives are so larger than life, and this is the conversation that I would love to have with you, Sameer, and get your thoughts, get your sort of experiences to share with our audiences here at Retail Media Lounge. So welcome, Sameer. Thanks for the time again, and would love to have you introduce yourself to the audience as well in more detail, and then we can take things from there.
Thank you so much, Ashish. It's such a pleasure to be on this show, and I'm seriously very excited. Talking about retail media networks is such an exciting topic, and Osmos is doing a fantastic job as well. With you spearheading it. So really looking forward to this conversation with one of the experts in the industry, which is you, and really looking forward to sharing my perspective. From the other side of the table, as I basically manage. The retail and consumer industry solutions from Google's perspective in the region. So
thanks,
thank
Sameer.
you so much for having
really
me.
Really appreciate it. So, Sameer, of course, we are in the thick of things of retail media, right? And we've been building the technology, servicing a lot of retailers with the retail media network and the platform out there. But from an outside-in perspective, Sameer, just would love to know, what's your take on retail media as overall? Why do you think it's important, and why now? And how are you seeing retailers ramp up on their adoption of retail media journey? Some experiences and your outside-in perspective would be great here.
Ashish, when I look at you from outside in, I would say you are in the sweetest spot of the industry today, running Osmos. Because retail media, from the way I look at it and everybody looks at it, is really at an inflection point today. If you really look at it, it is one of the first few channels that really connects advertising directly to the measurable commerce outcomes. So, when you start looking at it like that, people are now beginning to see this as one of the third big pillars of digital advertising after search and social. I think it is very logical as well, because of a few things that are happening in the industry. I think first of all, the biggest one is, as the cookies are going away, and the first party data is becoming all more important, there is one very stark reality facing everybody today. That, retailers are today holding the cleanest, the highest intent data in digital advertising. They know exactly, who bought, what, where, and when. And I think they are now sitting today at this authenticated, permissioned identity tied to SKU level transactions. I think that is a very, very big thing which is happening today, which is really shifting the stakes. The other thing that I'm seeing is, and I'm sure you are too, that brands want better accountability from their marketing budget. So as a result of which, they are looking for a better ROAS, and RMN, frankly, is able to offer that closed loop measurement. You do media spends, you can look at what is the basket size, how the SKU is uplifting, what is the market share gain, and so on and so forth. And that's really, really powerful. I think on the flip side of it, if you look at retailers as well, you find that now margins are tight, so they are looking for incremental revenues and new profit engines. And this plays beautifully in that thinking, because you know it better than me that gross margins are often more than 50-60% from a retail media perspective. If you look across all of these three stakeholders, there is one other thing I just want to mention, which is really driving this phenomena around retail media network, and that is that today the technology has finally matured to scale RMN. So if you look at from a technology perspective, what's really happening is that now retailers can leverage CDP. They can create clean identity graphs. You've got AdTech platforms for activation. You can potentially build clean rooms for data sharing, and the offline and online attribution people are now beginning to measure, and it is beginning to come together. So as a result of all this stuff, what we are seeing in the market is that there is a sudden surge and scale and interest within the retail communities to be able to now say, okay, now what can I do? Am I ready? What can I do? And how do I now build something like that which drives incremental revenue for me, which can, I can work closely with my brands and offer a much more personalized experience for my customers. So it's a great time to be.
Oh, definitely, Sameer. And you hit the right points. It's like we're seeing like a lot of good sort of tailwinds over the last year and a half, especially after COVID, where like a lot of these retailers suddenly started realizing that hey, here's like a significantly high margin revenue stream that they can get, and yet provide a platform for the brands to tell their stories to the consumers, right? And then one interesting thing, and maybe that's probably a topic for the next next podcast for us is we've been seeing that retail media has been seen as a more robust kind of revenue stream from both brands as well as from the retailer's perspective. But it's also very interesting on how RMNs can actually play role in actually helping brands to create and talk about their stories or narrate their stories with the consumers, not only just purely from a last mile conversion funnel perspective, but it's also story building exercise for the brands. Yeah, so
I think that's a very, very good point. Maybe we'll pick it up later, but I think that's the mindset change. How do you sort of move away from a campaign, only mindset to how do you start thinking of RMN as growth platforms for brands? And I think that's a very very interesting conversation and a very big cultural.
Exactly. Yeah, we'd love to host separate live discussion on that. But coming back to the retail media landscape, Sameer, how are you seeing? And we seen some different trends between the West and Asia Pacific, for example, right? So of course the RMNs have been there, Amazon and the Walmart of the world in the US. They've made it very popular over the last 6, 7, 8 years. But Asia Pacific landscape is also kind of ramping up extremely fast. We'd love to get your perspective. You being in Asia Pacific world, a lot more closer from a Google Lens perspective. How are you seeing the retailers sort of adopt this, challenges, opportunities that the retailers are seeing? Are they moving faster than their Western counterparts? Are they slower? We would love to get your perspective on that.
So I think that's a really great question. And I think, as you know, Asia Pacific is not truly a region. It's like a mix of multiple diverse markets. And I think from, my perspective, if I have to sum it up in one line, I would say, I think, I don't see Asian retailers struggling with the idea of adopting retail media, but I do see them struggling with the plumbing to make it scalable. And I think, and I'll explain to you why I say that, because when you look across the Asian retailers, and you would also agree with me that there's a huge diverse spectrum of digital maturity that you find. At one end, you have the marketplaces like Flipkarts, Lazada, Grab, Shopee, and so on and so forth, who have inbuilt media networks and platforms. You've got modern trade grocers who are sort of at a mid-maturity level of digitization, who have some level of branded RMNs, but they're not as complex, or they do much more simpler reporting and attribution. And then about 70-80% of the market actually is traditional retail today still. And I think from my experience, I find that majority of the market from a digital maturity is still at level 1 and level 2. uh, Not to say that there is no innovation happening in the market. Is actually one of the most promising, most amount of innovation that we see across, but I think the spectrum is a little wider from a maturity perspective. And I think what we need to understand and acknowledge, we need to understand, where the gaps are today, so that we are able to then navigate ourselves through this maturity maze. So, if I was to sort of say from a gaps perspective, I think the biggest thing that we see across majority of the Asian retailers, and I think I'm sure this is not just specific to Asia as well, is that most of the data is still very siloed, very fragmented. So loyalty data is at one point, POS data is somewhere else, e-commerce data is somewhere else, and so there is no real-time data access across all the systems. So as I call it, I love to call this as a system of insight. So I find that very few retailers are actually building or have the capability currently to build a system of insight. They have ambitions, they have aspirations, but I think they are moving towards that, as we say. And I think linked to that is a very big element as well, in terms of how do you ensure that you have a unified customer identity? How do you have a very clean identity graph across your shoppers? Because you have one shopper moving across multiple formats, and you need to be able to track it for attribution and so on and so forth. I think the other thing that I'm seeing, which is very relevant, especially from media activation and RMN perspective, and the ability to adopt it, is that I find many of our customers and shopper and retailers are still looking at measurement at the campaign level. They're not really looking at it at incrementality or category uplift. And if you keep reporting it the old way, like, what is the cost per impressions, and, versus what is the actual impact in terms of uplift, it's a huge challenge, because that's not how the market is moving. And I think the other last big thing that I'm now seeing slowly people acknowledging and moving towards is this whole area around organizational alignment and culture. You know, Often we find that customers might just give e-commerce teams a target, that why don't you go and do this, and build this. But it is not just an e-commerce game. It has to be media plus data plus category plus technology, merchandising. You need to have a cross-functional team. And I think till we see this misalignment, it is very difficult to bring the capabilities across the organization, because RMN is not a one function game. It is a cross-functional play. But I think while I say some of these challenges and scenarios within the region, there is also one. I think I'll be remiss if I don't talk about that, which is the talent. As you speak with your customers, Ashish, I'm not sure, you may or may not agree with me, but I feel that you need a special kind of talent to be able to lead and run, these kind of functions. You need a hybrid mix of media plus retail skill sets plus data skill sets. You have to think like a product manager, and you have to talk like a media planner, but you have to, operate like a commercial GM. So, that skill set is very critical. So I think what we are finding in Asia, that there is tremendous excitement, because people have suddenly woken up and discovered that this is the way to go. but I think the digital maturity is still a little varied, and people are still struggling with the plumbing as to how do I get it done. And I think this is where organizations like yourself play an extremely critical role, because you can really get them onto the ramp as quickly as possible and get them going on your way.
That's awesome, Sameer. I think you stated right. I think from a maturity and the whole org structure perspective, right? I mean, I think the retailer need not only be ready from a technology standpoint, but also like who would champion their program across which is a horizontal layer rather than a vertical layer. Horizontal layer across merchandising team, across the tech, across retail, the shopper experience perspective, etc. Out there. Are there some good stories or good idle retailers who are doing this extremely well versus in Asia, right? That other retailers can look up to or consider them as the benchmark out there that you think of.
Yeah, so I think we can take a lot of lessons from both global and local leaders, frankly. When you start looking at global leaders, of course, the first name which comes to your mind is Amazon, one of the leaders. But I think if you look across another like Walmart
Right.
and Walmart Connect, for example, it's extremely interesting because they have now built multi-billion dollar RMN units, and not just the way they run their retail operation, but the way they have also segregated and built a business around media activation. I think another one globally that I just want to sort of call out, and I often look at that, and I was tracking that company for the last couple of years, is Carrefour, for example, and we've been closely involved in that. And I think the way whenever we talk about RMN, for example, I look at RMN as one part of the puzzle of the whole data
Interesting. Yeah.
monetization play. And when you look across the data monetization play, it typically, I segment that into three big areas. So one, can you build yourself a system of insight? How do you build, a unified data strategy? How do you bring multiple sources together? Once you have done that and looked at operational efficiency, then you start looking at it as to how do you now use that and leverage that to drive incremental revenue, to drive profits, and so on. So and that's where you start to look at RMNs and other frameworks around it. I think the third one then sort of goes on to collaboration. How do you then build clean rooms and build collaborations with your ecosystem and extended stakeholders? So Carrefour Links is a very good example of that, and I think that comes to mind. Closer to home, I would say, there are organizations which have become leaders. For example,
Right.
Woolworths, I'll just give you an example. So Cartology is one of their, RMN units. And I think what they are doing is also extremely interesting because, they have put together offline plus, digital online plus their insight engine into a very interesting way, and they are building their ecosystem around it. So multiple examples. And you would have, of course, more than me because you deal with a lot of retailers, and you're also working with some very interesting retailers with Osmos that I'm aware of. I don't think I can share the names currently, but you
No,
can, of
definitely,
course.
Sameer. I think you're right. I think some of amazing case studies from Woolworths and Carrefour has been fantastic. We're seeing some retailers here in Asia Pacific. Also, they are actually getting ahead in terms of the innovations, especially in the whole offline in-store kind of monetization space, especially like the folks like DFI, like dairy farms saying, I mean, they have multiple labels under them, right, like the 7-Elevens of the world and the Guardians of the world, etc. They're doing some significant amount of investments and innovation on the because that 80-90% like you said, like the traditional retailers, 90% of the revenue and the shopper experience happen offline. What we see in the US, Europe, we believe that Europe is far ahead on the in-store and offline data monetization piece. But Asia Pacific is catching up really, really fast. And then US somehow at least from our experience, I mean, they're still like on that fence, like, should we do it? How should we do it, etc. Would love to get your perspective, like, what do you see on the in-store or offline sort of things? I mean, is what the trend that we are seeing, is it similar how you're seeing it, either from your perspective or Google's perspective out there?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things which are happening. So, I'll just come to the in-store one, but I think generally what we are seeing all the successful organizations do is that they're treating this like a strategic business. And I spoke about the data and I spoke about all that stuff. But I think what is most important is that they are treating it like a separate business model and a separate operating model. And I think it is extremely interesting, and they are measuring very, very differently. I think regarding in store, I personally feel that this is one of the biggest opportunities today, given at least the Asia Pacific market, because this is where you can convert all the dead inventories. You've got
Yeah.
the shelf space and the end caps and the screens and refrigerators and so on and so forth into monetizable inventory, into revenue generating inventory. And I think that is one. And I think the other big stuff is considering that 70-80% of the market is still offline, or still traditional retail in Asia. If you're able to crack and combine the in-store measurement and attribution with the online, and create a framework, you can really show the incremental impact on the marketing budgets. And I think that's what the brands are looking for. So I think this is one big piece of the puzzle, and I think I know that you as an organization are also pushing very hard on bringing both the platforms and the formats together onto one
Right. Yeah.
consolidated, so really, really exciting area to be currently
Awesome.
at
Thanks,
this
Samir.
stage.
And then if you can share whatever you can share, Samir, like how's Google enabling the whole ecosystem here, right? I mean, whether it's from a brand side of things or the retailer side of things, whether it's through technology, like whether it's AI, how's Google viewing the whole landscape? How is it enabling it? What's the play that Google sees today and let's say a few years out? Whatever that you can share with us, I think will be fantastic for the audiences to know.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's an interesting topic of discussion within Google, because sometimes people might see us as competition, sometimes they might see us as partners and so on. So let me clarify the role that we play. I think you have to look at Google as playing two roles. One is the role of a platform, and one is the role of an enabler. So when I say as a platform, I think we are the horizontal tech platform and enabler, and we provide the cloud infrastructure, the data platforms, the AI ML tools, and vertically integrated ecosystem, the clean rooms for data sharing, the measurements, and so on and so forth. And we do that so that retailers can build their own vertical retail media businesses on top. Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting proposition, because let me explain some of the components. So, for example, you got the data platform, so BigQuery, Looker, Analytics Hub. So, you can sort of play around with these, building blocks to create your system of insight,
Right.
and bring all the data sources together. Uh, you can, create safe collaboration pipes between brands and retailers, so that they are not sharing raw data, customer data, but they are sharing, encrypted and privacy safe data for joint collaboration. We've got very interesting ad tech building blocks as well. So you've got, of course, Google Ad Manager, DV360, SA360, and so on and so forth. The properties around search, social, YouTube. I think they are very, very powerful ecosystem that, as an organization, we have built, which retailers and brands can connect to go wider, or can adopt them into their RMNs to solidify them further. And I think the last bit, which is very, very interesting, which is where extreme focus is today across the organization, is the whole work which is being done around AI, ML, and automation. So that's a very, very interesting piece. I think very, very, you know, uh, uh, I would say creative and super efficient stuff which is coming out for multiple use cases, and we can talk about that, which is really fast tracking and changing the conversation the way retailers and brands are looking at their ad tech and media capabilities. So look at us as having dual roles as a platform helping retailers build their own media businesses, and also as an enabler, because we have built an amazing ecosystem across publishers and brands and RMNs, so that we can then they can plug into it and then scale
Very
it.
interesting, Sameer. And then yes, I'm like we are completely on Google Stack. The entire our RMN technology is built on Google Stack, and the sort of the pace at which like the tools, the enablement platforms that are coming out as part of the GCP stack overall has been super exciting. And like that, like on one hand, we feel like we can accelerate so much of innovation so much faster compared to let's say just a year back, and also creates a good traction amongst the retailers. I mean that the whole cycle of getting them onboarded, having the data sharing, synchronizing all of that becomes much faster. Um, so that's super exciting on how Google is innovating on these line items out there. Just changing gears a little bit, Samir, quickly, how do you think are shoppers as well as retailers taking this from the data and the consumer's trust perspective, right? I mean, so now a lot of this data, like of course, the retailer is reading on the first party data of the consumers, the transaction history and all that, making that sort of monetizable, but yet maintaining the shopper's trust. With of course, like a lot of governments are coming up with a lot of the data laws of the land out there. So, what do you think? How the retailers taking this, how the shoppers thinking about this, and how's sort of Google or platforms like ourselves. I mean, any advice there? How should someone look at the whole data trust and privacy kind of an angle?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting conversation. So, there was a time when the topic of privacy was a part of compliance discussion. But I think now privacy is more a competitive
That's very
advantage,
interesting.
if,
Okay.
if I may say so. I think I think so that's a mindset shift that if not if it has not yet happened within the retail community, it will happen. And I think from a retail media perspective, you have to see, I can say that I think it will only scale if shoppers trust how their data is used. And if shoppers feel that they are being watched and not understood, then your retail media business has a big problem. Yeah. So the way to look at this puzzle is to look at it from 4 or 5 different angles. First, I think as a retailer and a brand, you know, the time is coming that, I won't even say first party data. I think I was reading about it, and I talked about it in one of my blogs. I think we should probably start looking at it as a zero party data, fully consented, willingly shared by consumers to build trust and to create personalized you collect it through surveys, polls, campaigns, quizzes, whatever it is. I think slowly you build that in your ecosystem. But I think very important thing is that what do you give in return? So today, trust is equal to, if I was to equate trust with another word, I would say it would be value exchange. So trust will come if there is value which is exchanged. So I give you my data, but if you give me a personalized recommendation, your seamless experience, better offers, prices, discounts, and make my life good and make me feel understood and valued, then I trust you with my data. And I think the third thing that is very important is how do we share this data? Whether it is a brand or a retailer, when you have your shoppers and customers' data, if you are co-creating and collaborating with your stakeholders and partners, how are you sharing it? And I think that becomes very, very critical because if there is leakages there, if you're sharing too much or too little, that doesn't work. So it is not just about creating a unique identity and a data platform. You have to create clean rooms so that you're able to distribute that, so that then they are able to then use that to do the prediction and segmentation and activation and so on and so forth. I think the other piece that I just want to quickly point out in this very interesting topic is the whole area around data ethics. So, as an organization, I'll give you an example. There is a trend these days, in some of the countries, I visited, that you are doing an invoicing, while you are paying, they will ask you for your phone number and something else and something else. There is no reason why they should take it, but they just want as much as possible, and for no reason at all. I don't know where this is going. So there's an absolute level of mistrust around it. So you need to build transparency and you need to build consent as an organization, and you need to build that in your data ethics and practices and the way you collect and the way you're communicating. Also, minimize, take what you want, not really what you can,
Yeah.
and encrypt your data. Is very, very important. I think that way of thinking has to happen and change when you are beginning to now get into the era which is very privacy centric, where trust is very important, where consumers are getting more and more aware of their ability and capability to control their own information. There are discussions now to even set up customer-centric CDPs. I voluntarily give my data to X platform because I want something to come out of it. I think that's where it is going, and it's not 100% there. Maybe not 50, 60%, but I think it
That's
is
very
moving.
true. And I love that paradigm of the trust equates to value. So I think that just hits it really well, because just personally, when I put myself in a shopper's shoes, right, and I'm visiting Starbucks or I'm visiting Domino's or whatever, and you're right, like when you order something, it's like, sir, can I have your email address? Can I have your phone number? Like, no, I just want a cup of coffee and I'm done. Just like, here's your money, give me a cup of coffee, I'm out. And I would not trust, I would say, no, skip that. I don't want to give my phone number because I don't know what I'm going to get in return. I don't know how that information is going to be used. And especially challenging in an offline environment, because I honestly don't know what I'm sharing and vice versa kind of thing, right? So that without the sense of value in return, I'm always having my guards up when someone asks for my information out there. So that's very interesting.
If you if there was one mantra from a retailer's perspective, I would say, just to remember this one line, I will not sell your data, I will only use it to get better at serving you, and I will only use it to
Right.
help my partners to be more relevant. You know,
Yeah.
if you have to think on those lines, uh, and look at the whole area of privacy, data collection, building your identity graphs from that filter, and then things are going to look very, very different. So, it is easier said than done because, these are large organizations, matrix structures, multiple people involved in it. So it's a lot of learning and
Yeah, definitely,
self-awareness which
Sameer.
has to be
I
created.
think, and despite a lot of laws and stuff, I know that data trust and privacy and the data exchange, etc., is still fairly less understood by a lot of stakeholders in the ecosystem out there. But it's on the rise, and you're right. I think the more we do it and use it as a differentiator, as against in compliance, I think that's the perfect way of seeing it. That's fantastic. Thanks,
Yes.
Sameer, for that. Now, beyond retailers, we are also starting to see the trend, and you also touched upon, and one of the passage before was about the whole data monetization kind of an angle. which is a larger paradigm where retail media kind of sits is one of the component there. Like the rise of commerce media, like if we call it that way, like there are other verticals. We've heard about, let's say, like United Airlines launching its own media network, right? You have PayPal in the US wanting to launch its own media network, which is a fintech kind of an org. You also have people like Marriott, right, on the travel, on the hospitality side of things, launching its own media network. How are you like seeing this? This is super exciting, right? It's not like RMN, of course, is retail media network, but there's a larger world at play where people are sitting on a lot of transactional intelligence, the shopper touch points, etc., and hence the whole rise of the commerce media out there. How do you think that is being expanded both here globally out there? And yeah, would love to get your perspective there.
Absolutely. I think this is very, very interesting conversation because I think what has happened is that, so let me just, take a step back and explain. So I think commerce media is when, of course, you know it better than I do, when retail media concepts can be applied to any company which has a transactional data and has a customer or consumer touch point.
Yeah.
And I think why not? Because these companies have also just realized that they are sitting on a gold mine of first party data. They understand who their customers are, how they're interacting with. They can do precise targeting with high touch moments. They can collaborate with their partners and stakeholders to offer the same value propositions as what we just have been talking about in retail media. So why not? So technically speaking, essentially any B2C company can set up a media platform, a commerce media platform. So if you were to look at it, I would say that all retail media is commerce media, but all commerce media is not retail media. Yeah, so that sort of differentiates it. But I think what it tells us, and there are multiple examples, as you said, you got food tech platforms, Uber Eats and, Swiggy, Zomato and all, they basically are like RMNs for restaurants. And brands, selling to or giving offers to their shoppers and customers. You got telcos and fintechs, for their retail customers. You got travel sites, as you said, for XYZ. I think the way to think from a retail perspective about commerce media is, so this is here to stay. But I think what it has done, it has changed the paradigm of the conversation that you cannot just now think my site and my app as a retailer. You have to think about this as an ecosystem, as a network, as a platform. So how do you connect to audiences which are adjacent to your own ecosystem? You build partnerships and affiliates for a broader play in adjacent verticals. Because you have the same shopper. The way to think about this is be absolutely razor focused on your customer. The same customer and shopper is going not only to your retail platforms, but also going to those adjacent commerce transactional platforms. He's also booking a ticket, he or she is also ordering food, also paying through cards, and is your customer and shopping. So it is a common network. How do you build an alliance within that network is what will define your success in the new world of commerce media. And I think it's a very, very exciting development that we see happening, which has in my view, a widespread, implications on the way anybody starts to think about media
very
platforms.
true, Sameer. And that's where I think the technologies like the clean rooms, etc., come in play, where like the two large sort of complementary entities can come in together and enrich the experience both for the shoppers as well as for the advertisers out there. This was done sometime in the past, but we know Hotstar and Flipkart had come together to sort of combine synergies. Hotstar being like the CTV platform and Flipkart, the largest marketplace, having a lot of retail transactions. Now imagine the same shopper, what kind of content is he or she consuming, and then the enriched sort of enablement of targeting these shoppers across platforms for the advertisers, it can become a gold mine. Yeah, that's super super cool.
Actually,
So Samir, just looking ahead, what excites you? Say 1 year, 2 year, 3 year down the line, what excites you about the whole space of commerce media slash retail media? And then you talked about a few mindset changes, right? I mean, in terms of, hey, can I use RMN from ROAS to from a storytelling perspective, like brand building perspective, etc. What are a few of those mindset changes that need to happen to see this transformation even accelerate over the next couple of years?
I think it's these are. I think the second question is a very complicated question. Let me first tackle that
Sure.
in terms of mindset and leadership. You know, the ability for RMN to scale is not a technology challenge anymore. And technology is available. It is truly, truly a leadership challenge. It is truly an organizational, shift, an organizational, an operating model challenge, and a cultural challenge as well. I think from a leadership perspective, the way to look at it is as a leader that you have to move away from the product mindset. You cannot just say I sell products as a retailer. You have to start thinking about, I orchestrate my shoppers, audiences, products, and brands.
Yeah.
That's my role. How do I bring this all together onto a common platform? And I'm not supposed to be just an expert in retail and category management. I also understand media. I am a data literate. I understand how data works. And I'm not just focused on my quarterly budgets. I'm looking at a long-term partnership frameworks. So these are very, very, fundamental shifts with respect to how you think, and this also warrant the kind of leadership you want in the retail today. And it is not easy. So these are decisions which boards will have to take as the organizational and operating models are shifting. I think of course, organizationally, the other shift is that you have to create it like a separate business unit with a P&L responsibility. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. But a big cultural shift, I would say, apart from the product into the orchestration mindset, is, from a media perspective, and this is coming from, media planners and media sales guys, that you're not selling ads, you are selling outcomes. So, that thinking completely changes the paradigm, because if that thinking changes, then you will move away from going and selling one-off campaigns to how do I create and make this into a growth platform for my brands,
Right.
which is always on. And they have that trust and they have the confidence that let me work with this retailer who has this growth platform, which gives me the audiences that I'm looking for, which sort of creates that incrementality for what I'm looking for, and which drives the selling outcomes. So that's a big shift. So as these things are happening, and I spoke to you about in terms of commerce media, the future is looking very interesting because slowly, if not now, it will happen that, and we are seeing that change happening now. There's a huge furore in the organization, in the ad tech side, media side, technology side, that customers don't want to talk about inventory. And we cannot go and sell inventory anymore. We have to start, and it will move towards selling intelligence, selling outcomes. So that shift from selling inventory to selling an outcome or selling intelligence is the big shift which will happen, if not yet, in the future. And we are all moving towards that. And whether it is the technology platforms which is creating the capability for retail medias to become like platforms. So it's like if I was to give an analogy, I would say, we see this moving into a
Right.
platform decade, for example. And commerce media is a great example of that first step. that to be able to build commerce media networks, it is not just one my site, my app. You have to build an ecosystem. You have to build multiple players and stakeholders to put together, offering a multi-publisher sort of a framework on that platform. I think the other thing which you will see more and more happen, especially in Asia, is because majority of the large retailers are coming, they are more traditional retailers with large physical presence, and a smaller digital presence. So they would want to optimize that first. So in-store retail media will catch up more and more. If you crack that first, you obviously get the digital, but that becomes an entry point in majority of the cases that I see. And what it will do and is doing is that it is creating this whole area of unified measurement, to become more of a reality. So cross-platform attribution is becoming more of a reality now, and you're able to sort of differentiate and demarcate and sort of pinpoint and say, what is the incrementality if I do X, Y, Z across this unified cross-platform play. So that I see very as an interesting play happening, and where this will go, frankly, and which is the holy grail of the path that we are on, is to build, to who is going to be that central piece which offers insight as a service. Is it going to be a neutral platform? Is it going to be one of the retailers? Is it going to be a cross-platform play? Because that is the holy grail, where you will have the stakeholders in this ecosystem of retailers, brands, and consumers, and you have a central repository, whether it repository is a central neutral or somebody, and you have the checks and balances, which is able to offer insights as a service, which everybody dips into to offer experiences and services and everything else across this ecosystem. So a lot of interesting things coming, and of course, all this is now supercharged with AI and all the interesting use cases that now we are beginning to see with AI, whether it is demand sensing or continuous offer shaping or media activation or dynamic budgeting and so on and so forth. There is a ton of stuff which is happening in that field, and as you integrate this more and more, this whole area of executing and scaling from a technology perspective and RMN becomes simpler. So platforms which make it easier for brands and retailers to be able to collaborate and co-create, looking at their shoppers' experiences, and those platforms.
That's
are
fantastic,
definitely
Sameer. I think that's amazing. Kind of a forward-looking idea. It's almost like a startup in itself. Like I've started thinking about it, that it's almost like a credit union that today you have of consumer credit union, where
Yes,
a lot of these
of course,
players, right? I mean, all your telcos and everyone share
of course,
the credit history or credit,
of
whatever
course.
transaction, etc., with the central bureau, and then they also get the insights. Whether should I grant him a loan, how much, at what API, etc., all of that. Imagining that for the whole commerce media network, whether it's the shopper experience across different retailers, different commerce platforms, the data intelligence, the transactional intelligence, all of that in a clean room kind of a way, and then you tap into that as an insider service. That's brilliant, Sameer.
That I think I remember I started thinking about these things a few years ago, and I think when I look at it in my mind, the visualization is always that as a platform, you've got the three stakeholders of retailers, consumers, and brands. How do I bring them all together?
Right.
And who's going to bring them all together? I think that's the holy grail and the fight which is happening in terms of who gets there first, where is the technology, who builds it, who gets the trust, and how do you execute it. And I think all the things that we have spoken about, RMN is just one part of the puzzle, because you need data and insights, not just for media activation, but for a lot of other stuff.
You think anyone's making a play already in building, getting this?
I think there have been multiple attempts, but I think this that's a topic of another
Yeah.
conversation, Ashish, you and me. Maybe after this
Yeah,
podcast, we
yeah,
can sit
exactly.
together and hash
Sounds
out a
good.
plan.
Looking forward to it. Super exciting. Samir, I mean, this has been fantastic. I learned a lot as always with you. Like, whenever I meet with you, it's just like that the whole intelligent simulation. I think it's just fantastic to have a chat with you.